Hello and welcome. Great to have you listening to the Product Owner Podcast, recorded live from the Product Owner Event 2024. And that's right, today we are recording not in Dutch, but in English, because we have an international guest with us. My name is Ruud Adriaans, and today I'm joined by none other than Dave West. Dave is the CEO of Scrum.org and flew in all the way from the USA to be the keynote speaker at this event. Together with Dave, I would like to explore what's the future of Scrum about and how I, as a product owner myself, can best prepare for it. We will also learn some more about the Agile Product Operating Model, and of course, I'm quite curious how Dave did become the CEO of Scrum.org. Dave, welcome.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you here. And to kick off, first of all, today you're at the biggest gathering of the product owners in this part of Europe has ever seen. How does it feel for you to be part of that?
It's pretty amazing, actually. In fact, I think this is the only dedicated product owner conference in the world. So it's the largest single gathering of product owners in this part of Europe, but I think it's the largest single gathering of product owners in the world.
And all across the world, you mean?
Yeah. As I was walking up the stairs, there's obviously a big sign that says, "Welcome to the productowner.nl conference." And it's kind of humbling. You know, Scrum was invented 30-something years ago. And interesting, my boss, Ken Schwaber, chairman of Scrum.org, he always says he's shocked by the impact it's had. It was built out of necessity, and actually Product Owner was built out of necessity. You know, it was originally Agile Product Manager, then they were working on the FBI Sentinel program, and Ken was having a lot of problems with people kept telling his teams to do other things than the things that were in the sprint. So he created this title and made this role, Product Owner, because you're in charge. Nobody else can tell the teams what to do. Yeah. And, you know, the term stuck, and it's become something truly bigger than I think Ken and Jeff even considered when they created Scrum.
Yeah, and how would you think he would be feeling when he arrives at this event? Like, he came up with the title Product Owner, and now there is a certain Product Owner event. What do you think?
I think he'd be
humbled, maybe.
I think I don't think Ken would ever be humbled. Okay. But I've known him. Almost 30 years. Actually, I met Ken when I was the RUP product manager, the Rash Unified Process product manager. You're far too young to remember that, but it was a sequential process that had some iterative in it. And he told me I was an idiot, and ever since then we've built this relationship. And during those 30 years, you know, I've always been shocked by his ability to sort of be a little bit naughty and be able to change the world around him into the ideas that he has. So I think if he came here, he would be very honored. He would be very surprised. And then he would start asking product owners if there are real product owners. And he'd start getting frustrated because the majority of organizations have implemented Scrum in a way that mirrors his ideas and him and Jeff's ideas, but they don't act, the essence of it is sometimes missing, particularly the alignment to product, the empowerment of product owners, and the ability for them to make decisions about the work that the teams, the value the teams are delivering. So I think he'd then get very naughty, I think would be a good way. He'd be wandering around, you know, causing trouble, telling people that they needed to go back to their organizations and blow them up and the like. But I think he'd also be very proud. Yeah,
but you're saying he would question whether it are all real product owners?
Yes, he would. I think that he's always been disappointed by the ability of organizations to really implement Scrum.
Yeah, okay.
And because it's hard, right? I mean, it's hard to go from a very industrial, mass production sequential control, centralized control kind of model, which is how many of these organizations were created, to something that is more team-based, teams of teams, a network rather than a hierarchy, product owners having responsibility and ownership of the products that they're delivering, managing the work as a portfolio rather than a plan. I think it's very hard to do that transition.
Yeah.
And we are seeing it. We are seeing continuous move towards it, but it's never as fast as Ken would want. He's a revolutionary. That's reason why he's created something that has changed the world. Him and Jeff Sutherland have created something that have fundamentally changed the world, and you don't get that by accepting the status quo, right?
Yeah, that's true, but it also feels a little bit like you have a child and he's leaving the house after a little while, and you leave it to the great wide open world, and then it's gonna change people. He meets others, people are going to be involved with your kid, and the kid change, and you can't stick with the main idea, but what you had with growing your kid, but the other way around. I can imagine that he feels sometimes like, okay, this is not what I meant when I set this up like this.
Imagine that he's got a child that's probably smarter than Einstein, that's physically as fit as Usain Bolt. He can play soccer better than Messi, and they're currently working in Starbucks. And that's what sometimes I think he feels that Scrum, to use that analogy of, hasn't really delivered on its full potential. I think I'm a little bit more pragmatic than Ken. I'm less of a revolutionary, and I accept the points that you made. It is the reality of the world that we're looking at today is that many of these product owners are in situations that are incredibly hard. And they are delivering value, and they are helping their teams deliver more value, and they are creating environments that are beneficial to both the teams and the organizations. However, could it be better? Of course it could. Yeah. Let's just help them get a little bit better. That is, I think, that's a good cause. I remember when I started many years ago working, I saw one of these career people, and they said, you need to get a personal mission, Dave. I was like, oh god, that sounds awesome. So I did, and it was to help people and teams create software really well. And then I met these people and teams, and I realized that I should change it to help people and teams create software just a little bit better. Yeah. And I think that every day where we can do something a little bit better, it's a positive day, right? Yeah. Yeah, that sounds very good. And meanwhile, I'm listening to you, and so you've been knowing him for a long, long time. And there was a certain moment he appointed you as CEO, or asked you like, "Hey, do you want to see you?" What's the goal that he gave to you? Like, you are a successful CEO if whatever. What did he tell you? It's funny. And this is very Ken. He said, "Don't," and he used a swear word, which I'm not going to use now. He says, "Don't get it wrong. Don't break the company." And that's the easy goal. Okay, it's just commitment. That's the most important thing. Do not break Scrum. Okay. Do not break Scrum.org. Yeah. And then he said, find your passion. Now my passion isn't perhaps everything to do with Scrum. I care deeply about everything to do with Scrum. I care mostly, I think, about empowered teams and product ownership, those sort of things. Cool. I'm less into sort of like the agile coaching, the servant leadership, those elements. Obviously, in our community, we have people that are incredibly strong in those areas, and they help me deal with some of those weaknesses. But I care deeply about delivering valuable products. So I love product management, product ownership. I really, really like the idea that we can empower people and have whole teams of people helping each other deliver amazing products. I'm not really a fan of the hierarchical product organization. I don't really like a separation of delivery from sort of like ideation and the like, whether that's some sort of discovery kind of organization that's doing that. I don't like that separate. I think that if you create amazing teams, you give them a great leader with a product owner that has that power to do that. You point them at the customer, you have a clear goal, amazing things happen. And that's really my passion. So he said, find your passion and then execute on it. And Scrum.org during my tenure has grown. I don't think it's all to do with me, though, unfortunately. I think the digital is obviously very connected to Scrum.
Digital really adopted Scrum and accelerated the adoption of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And COVID certainly increased that adoption. I mean, that was a catalyst, and a horrible one, and I don't really want to go back to that ever again. But so, we went from 100 trainers to 360. We went from 100,000 people coming to our website to 1.2 million people coming to our website every month. We have grown. But I think that's a testament to Scrum becoming more this standard way in which teams work.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And I see the funny thing is, like, obviously the podcast listeners won't see it, but I see like a kind of a twinkle in your eyes when you talk about the passion you have for Scrum and the future about basically working in product. So that's quite cool to see. Yeah.
I come from a very working class family in England, just outside Leicester. And my mum worked in Sainsbury's, a supermarket, for many, 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 many years. She just retired, actually, and she's having the time of her life. I'm sort of a little jealous of her. But she spent many, many years working in a supermarket where she could have had a massive impact in improving the processes and systems that supermarket had, right? She worked on the cigarette counter, which also did the lottery and stuff. And, they'd always deliver the cigarettes, which are obviously a very valuable commodity, at the time when it was Friday night, when the lottery was about to be called that night. So you'd get a big line, you get all the boxes, it would be a mess. She knew how to fix the system, but she wasn't allowed to. She worked in an organization that you do your job.
Was not expected from her to.
No, not expected. And that's no insult to Sainsbury's. It's an awesome company with amazing management and doing some great Scrum, actually. But it's more a testament to the environment and to even her asking. She didn't feel that she had the authority. So I believe deeply that empowered teams are the future of knowledge work. And I do believe that everybody should have the ability to change the environment, to influence the environment they work within. And I think Scrum it's not the only way, obviously, but I think it's a really good way of providing that structure and giving people the currency to make those changes. So that continues to be my passion. And obviously what those teams are doing are products. You're delivering amazing products to customers and wowing them every day.
Yes.
So you're right. I've got a little twinkle in my eye.
Twinkle in your eyes, yes. And you say empowered teams, and you mean by that like literally everybody as part of the team can make decisions, can take a leadership role, can change things, right?
Yes. I mean, so say you're in a team of 12 people, 10 people. All of those people bring their own skills, their own experience, their own life, journey. And being able to bring all that together, it's certainly smarter than one person telling them what to do.
Totally.
And if they have the skills to work with customers, to listen to customers, to ask the right questions, to form the right hypotheses, which they can then check and change. And they're in an environment that allows them to learn, allows them to test ideas, allows them and actually encourages them to test what things make sense, the assumptions that underline every system. Then I think that you get so much more out of an organization. Also, it's just a better place to work.
It's more fun and you feel more appreciated. I find it quite weird. Honestly, it's maybe hard for organizations, but sometimes I find it quite weird. Why would you not use all the intelligence capacity and dreams that people within your team have and like keep it isolated to just one person or maybe a couple of persons that are the board or whatever? I don't get that actually, but that's maybe because I've been working with Scrum quite a long time and that's such a bad thing.
I think that ultimately that it's status, power, authority. It's thousands, maybe millions of years of evolution that has brought us to the point that we're at. And I think all those things ultimately get in the way of this sort of like next evolution of how people work together. And we could talk for hours about that. And I know we've got other topics to go, but I think the bottom line is that every day our product owner community is striving, and I believe they are, to do exactly what we're saying, create the right guard conditions to allow teams to effectively move in the right direction to deliver value to customers. And I just remind them all that perhaps by taking advantage, they don't have to do everything. They should take advantage of the teams around them.
Yeah.
They don't have to write every backlog item. They don't have
That's what some product owners do. They tend to write every item, think about every user story, take all responsibility for every task that's done in the team.
And then they're far too busy and they don't actually have time for vision, and they don't have, they spend all their time on now rather than the future.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily build those relationships with stakeholders. Remember, product owners, you have an opportunity in a team or teams, you might have multiple Scrum teams working with you, for them to take responsibility for some of those tasks that are really getting in the way of you doing the next level of tasks, the future looking, the visioning, etc. So take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yes, like you said, we have a couple of things to run over. And first of all, I will go to a couple of statements. I have 3 statements and you can just reply on it, whatever you want. I'm just curious where this will go to. The first one is Scrum's foundation in flexibility and responsiveness ensures its strength and relevance in an ever-changing environment.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I mean, Scrum was created because in software development in the, 80s, late 70s, early 80s, and 90s, the software development, you have the opportunity to deliver anything. You don't necessarily know what your customer wants. You've never worked together as a team. All those unknowns, all that level of uncertainty meant that Scrum was created to build stuff to sort of like challenge that uncertainty continuously. And the world is only becoming more uncertain. I don't know if you've worked with LLMs or any of those generative AIs. We're doing a bunch of very interesting spikes, experiments with them at the moment at scrum.org. And what I have learned is that a model needs to be tuned continuously until it doesn't. And that means you have to incrementally release. It means you have to have very clear understanding of what good looks like, because you could go on forever. And so it's even more important, a tool like Scrum in those situations. So the world is only getting more complex and there needs to be more flexibility to support that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds very good. And the second one's going to be more about the role of Scrum Masters. So the statement is, the role of Scrum Masters seems to be becoming less relevant as product owners report working with them less frequently. The Scrum Master role in its current setup is not that future-proof.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I think there's many factors that influence in that. Yes, in a nutshell, yes. There's a Scrum. If you look at how many open vacancies for Scrum Masters, and you look at the number of people that are looking for work as a Scrum Master, that statement totally is true. However, I think that it's lots of factors for that. One, there's a macroeconomic factor. That Scrum Masters haven't necessarily got support of the organizations they work within. So when times are hard, they get rid of them. Secondly, there's a lot of Scrum Masters that haven't the authority to actually do their job today. There's a delivery manager, a project manager, a product owner, a product manager, if we're doing safe, and then a Scrum Master. And you're like, well, what the heck? It's so complicated. A Scrum Master should be a manager. It really should be a delivery manager. That's exactly what Scrum Master was originally. And somebody that cares very deeply about frequency of delivery, sort of like the flow of work, how quickly we're doing it, and how much of that work is innovative. How much of it is new stuff? How much of it is just fixing things? So you can think of that as organizational capability. You need to have somebody that's concentrating on that. Now, in most organizations, that is should be a manager. So a Scrum Master should be a manager. There's no reason why it shouldn't. Whether it's the title is manager or Scrum Master is sort of irrelevant. Job titles are irrelevant, but the accountabilities of the Scrum Master need to be
addressed.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Whether it's via a manager or somebody else. It is, though, disappointing that the Scrum Master community has not managed to articulate its value effectively, and thus we're seeing that the change that you described. It's really, really, really sad. Now, does that mean that Scrum is not relevant anymore? I think it's as I say, the first statement, right? It's more relevant today than it was even yesterday. Mm-hmm. Now, how it's being practiced, well, that's a whole different question. So yeah, disappointing, but yes, probably true.
You trigger me with mentioning that it could be like a Scrum Master, but it could also be called a delivery manager. And thinking about organizations that are thinking about their budgets and people that they need for the next year, feels like a delivery manager. And you say, like job titles are irrelevant. However, I feel like when people that not aware about Scrum that much and have to set up a budget, they would rather go and set budget for a delivery manager because it feels like they have more control whatsoever instead of a Scrum Master.
Yeah. And that I think that's illustrative of how the change of moving to the sort of more agile organization has been. It's not been as successful as we would want, right? You want somebody that manages, you want somebody that's in charge, etc. And a Scrum Master should have all those characteristics. Yep. However, how they implement it should be very different from perhaps that. So I think that it's important for organizations not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, to coin a phrase. Scrum is an incredibly effective way of organizing in a complex environment. Yep. The responsibility or the accountability of a Scrum Master is necessary to support that. That means you have somebody that's worrying about impediments. That means you have somebody that's concentrating on flow of work. That means you have somebody that's empowering the team, creating an environment where Scrum or that way of working can succeed. You need to do those things. Yeah, if your title's delivery manager, that's fine. If your title's Scrum Master, that's also fine. If your title's Agile delivery manager, that's fine. If you're, but you need somebody that's accountable for ensuring that you're delivering value consistently and helps the team become self-organizing, empowered, all those things.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds very good. Interesting to talk about this topic. And then I have the third and the last statement, which is obviously about AI. The statement is, with AI evolving rapidly, its capabilities will eventually replace the roles of both Scrum Masters and product owners. And maybe we might zoom in more on product owners on this type.
So I do believe that LLMs, artificial intelligence, the use of these algorithms and large language models are providing us with amazing opportunities to do work differently. However, from my experience, and who knows where the world is going to end, but from my experience, the creative process, the ability to use that information and make judgment calls, the ability to talk to stakeholders, the ability to engage stakeholders, is still requiring of a human being. Now, how you use the tools to refine your understanding of their responses, that I think that's the key as a product owner. I recently we were sort of testing a class where we used AI to write vision statements, create elevator pitches, create value propositions, create hypotheses, create tests. It's fantastic. The tools that we have at our disposal today are fantastic for helping product owners really do the boring stuff. However, they do not supplement the skills the product owner has in terms of really focusing on what the right problem is, making judgment calls about what the team needs to focus on. They're also not fantastic at engaging stakeholders. They are really good at helping product owners talk to stakeholders with the right questions based on data. One big weakness in the product owner community, from what I've observed, is their ability to use data. Because it's hard, right? I don't know about you, but those lectures at university were perhaps the most boring, right?
For sure.
Bob Borington, I think, was our lecturer. If he wasn't, I may have made that up.
Yeah, I can't even remember my lecturer.
I know,
that was how interesting.
Remember the stats books? They were the thickest books that you got from, you had to buy them and they filled your bag. But the reality is that these tools can really help with data. Recently we used ChatGPT to look at a significant data set that we were mucking about with, and it really did help me make some make some decisions about what to do next based on data. It also helped equip me to ask the right questions of my stakeholders with data-informed questions. So I think that AI is definitely going to change our jobs. However, I still see a role for human beings, definitely for the next 5 to 10 years. Who knows after that, hey?
Yeah, and saying so the human aspect that can never be replaced by AI. I think that applies for basically all the jobs that we have in this world. What are the 2-3 things? So you're mentioning data is an interesting thing. What are the 2-3 things that a product owner should use AI already with?
Yeah, it's interesting. So one, use it on the data that you have. I think it's very powerful, and there's a lot of tools that are emerging to do that. Number 2, use it to help you write better.
Yeah.
Product owners do a lot of writing, whether it's vision statements, whether it's elevator pitches, whether it's, single sheets that describe the problem. Generative AI today is an incredible tool for helping you write things better. And that improves communication, and that's awesome. And then the last one is looking at analyzing and creating things like elevator pitches, doing requirements analysis, creating tests. AI is a fantastic tool for those kind of monotonous things that you, as a product owner, seem to spend your whole life doing. It can do it a lot faster than you can, and it's of a higher quality.
Yeah, the topic about communication that you mentioned, that really occurs to me. I use that a lot. I also use it, like I set up user stories, and then I ask AI, like, hey, what's missing, or what questions would be asked based on this user story? What's key? And it got so important to me. I'm using ChatGPT. That's quite big in the Netherlands. I think all across the world, but at least in the Netherlands, that's number 1. And when it happens a couple of times, that's out for 3 or 5 minutes, and I really feel already like, oh damn, I'm really like I need this somehow. I can't somehow, for emails, for user stories, for challenging me, for thinking about topics, whatever. It's really embedded in my way of working already.
Yeah, and it's only going to get more embedded. I was at a large consumer packaged goods company a few weeks ago talking to a product owner there, and we're just talking about general stuff. We were having a cup of coffee, and he said, oh yeah, I'm on the early adopter of the Microsoft Copilot Office initiative. And I said, how's it going? He goes, I started it a couple of weeks ago, and I now no longer write my own emails. I was like, what? He said, I didn't realize how much time I spent writing emails. He goes, but I'm always writing emails. And what I do now is I just ask it to respond, and I give it a bit of stuff, and I change some things, and then it responds. And he goes, and I said, what are you doing with all the extra time? He goes, actually, what I'm doing is competitive analysis and spending more time with my customers. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. He goes, yeah, basically, I'm using the time to actually do the things that I never have enough time to do. And I think that's really what generative AI is providing us in those co-pilots. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm also a little worried for my children, because though I think today humans have a distinct part in the program, I was listening to a podcast on generative AI, and basically 2029 is when they think the singularity will happen. The singularity is when, if you believe all the hype, that's when this software will become cognizant, it could become sentient. Yeah. And then, and it's going to be better than us. So that's going to be more interesting. I don't know what's going to happen then.
And the crazy thing would be that there are children growing up soon with AI already. It's always been there. Like I grew up and there was no really proper Wi-Fi whatsoever, and after a little while there became Wi-Fi, 4G, whatever. And the kids grew up afterwards like having always access to super fast internet. So they are not aware that once there was no internet or no fast internet or not always available internet. And nowadays children will grow up with AI being there and never knew how it was without that. That's gonna be crazy.
So I have two sons, 8 and 11, and my both of them have dyslexia, and they go to a special school designed for dyslexia. And dyslexia, I'm dyslexic, and I couldn't read till I was almost 10, and it's always been an incredible challenge for me to write.
Can imagine.
And I've written a few books and all that, and because when it's hard, you got to do it more, right? Anyway, so
you're training it, right?
Gosh. But what's interesting is that watching my son, my 11-year-old in particular, write now, and how he uses technology to augment his written, just read back, for instance, which was for me was incredible. It's a very powerful tool, but I would still read over words that weren't there. I would still connect words that weren't there, and they'd hand it in. They'd say, "Well, there's words missing," and I'm like, "Oh." So the great thing is just things like read back, the things that, Grammarly, things like that, they're really helpful. Yeah. And you're exactly right. These kids are going to be able to, I hope, do a lot more innovative work because of the technology that we're developing today. Yep. And I think it's exciting because the innovative work is the stuff that is both the most rewarding and exhausting. So I'm excited for the future, yet a little nervous.
Yeah, okay, that's a great bridge, we call it in Dutch. I'm not sure it's an English term as well, but a bridge to the next topic, which you're here for today. So at the Product Owner event, maybe also another couple of things, but to talk about the Agile Product Operating Model. Some people call it a little bit the future of Scrum, I've heard. Is that correct, or is that what do you think about?
So I mean, I honestly don't know if it's the future of Scrum. What I do know, however, is that organizations that are more aligned to product and where they have empowered their product teams to take ownership of how they operate, their operating model, they are more successful than organizations that are still using a project approach and the like. So it is my assertion that we went from team-based agility to scaling frameworks, which was like less and safe and Scrum at Scale and Nexus. We then went to enterprise agility where, Spotify model and McKinsey and BCG put in all these ideas. We're now at a point where a lot of the fundamentals, the foundations are in place. Yeah. However, we're still doing projects. We're still working in these disempowered organizations. We're still working in these hierarchies. We're still aligning around skills, even though we have all of these ideas running around the organization. So I think the next step is product alignment. If we can align to an agile product operating model, if we can discover what the products are in your organization, then that would really help these Scrum teams really be incredible and deliver incredible value to their customers. And if we can help them do that with, content and ideas and training classes and the like, then Scrum will thrive. So I don't know if it's the future of Scrum. I know it is the best way of, from what I've observed, creating an environment for Scrum to succeed.
Yeah, and maybe to provide a little bit more context, can you run over what's the model about basically, and so what does it look like?
It isn't any rocket science, really. I mean, ultimately, it is number one, find out what your products are. Define your organization, not in terms of teams and systems and projects, etc., but in terms of products. What are the products that comprise your organization?
So do you mean don't think about sales, marketing, HR, operations, and product? Think about product.
Yeah, think about product. Think about the capabilities or the goods and services that you provide. Now, some of those products are provided for yourself, the internal products. Some of those products are provided for external organization. I was talking to somebody at the conference today who works at at a large museum in the Netherlands. I won't say which, and she was saying that they're still project oriented, and we're creating all these amazing biodiversity sort of tools, or tools, right? And these tools are sort of, because we're using projects, they sort of happen, we develop them, and then of course they're not perfect, but they fulfill enough to get going, and then they die on the vine because we've not got that product culture. And she's like, we need to move to that product culture because ultimately then we really can invest and innovate around the services that our organization delivers, and also make decisions about where we're investing in terms of that, as opposed to making decisions about these projects and then them disappearing at the end of the funding cycle, and then that's it. We need to think about the capabilities that this museum provides to the outside world in a more systemic way. So at the heart of it is this idea of products. Then there's another very important concept, which I think is worth talking about, and that is that each product potentially has its own operating model. Mm-hmm. And that means that an organization doesn't have one process, one governance model, one organization construct, one set of rewards and incentives. Yep. But potentially each product has its own. Now, obviously, the reality is it's never going to be quite as complex than that. However, there's so many organizations that I see where everything is treated the same. You've got these, the website, and that provides, information, and that's the service that it provides, information to get to products and da-da-da. And that's being managed exactly the same as their mission critical health care. You're just going through all these governance checks and the like. And that's just silly. So each product potentially has its own operating model. Yes, of course, if you work in an organization, there's constraints and the like. Everything has to conform to
there will always be there, yeah.
But generally it has its own operating model. And then the actual operating model, well, that's not rocket science. It's the same as what all operating models are. There's an organizational construct, there's some sort of governance construct, there's some sort of way of sort of jobs, titles, etc. There's obviously the information that we capture. All the things that make an operating model operate are the same. That makes no difference. But however, it's important that these things consider agility. It's important that they consider things like ideas like separating work management from people management. It's important that the incentives align to the outcomes. It's important you have the right measures in place. It's important that you, et cetera, et cetera. Yep. So it's how do you compose and build an organization, an operating model to support products in a more effective way. And that's what I'm going to be talking about at the event. It's still early days bringing these ideas together. Yeah. However, there is another important reason why I'm talking about this. The product management community, which is adjacent, though not aligned to the product owner community, seems to be going through a bit of a revolution. You've got people like Marty Kagan, Melissa Perry, some amazing, insightful, great writers, great evangelists for the product management community. What worries me deeply about some of the stuff they're saying is that it's undermining a lot of agility and a lot of the ideas of agility, particularly the ideas of empowerment versus hierarchy. Yes. Oh. And ownership versus management. And, the fact that you have separate organizations doing data analysis of your products and, product ops, etc. So I really want to build a bridge, this amazing, thoughtful thinking or ideas that are coming from the product community to ensure that it's brought into the agile community in a way that allows us to continue to do our agile stuff. We don't want to throw to use that thing, baby and bathwater thing again. But what we want to do is take advantage of that to build amazing organizations that serve customers better.
What are the key things for organizations, for teams to start with this model right away? Why would you say, if you're listening to this podcast, like if you acknowledge this, you feel like this, then you should already start implementing or take a look at it?
Yeah, well, so we should be always looking at how we're organized and what some good ideas in the industry are. However, changing to a product orientation can be quite fundamental, from an organization investment.
The transition is going to be quite hard.
Yeah, so what I tend to propose is two things. One, for the products that you have obviously got, start working in that way. Start thinking about them in an more effective way, a more holistic way.
Yeah.
However, if you're working in a project environment today, at least start thinking more product-y. So it's a mindset, right? So start thinking about customers, start thinking about outcomes, start thinking about what the product value proposition really is. Start reframing your product backlogs to talk about product backlogs, even if they're funded via projects.
Yeah.
So start taking ownership of the product and don't worry about how it's funded, because if projects come, projects go, at least start thinking about your products Yeah, and then maybe, if we're lucky, projects just become a funding vehicle that provides you with the ability to keep working on them as you slowly reduce the amount of projectness incrementally.
Yeah, and you've been, so today at the event you're going to be talking about this model. What did you hear so far from other product owners, product managers, or people in the product community about this model?
I think, well, a couple of things. One, people are saying, oh, it's great to see what's next for Scrum and Agile, etc.
Okay, and there are some next steps, so great to see that. Yeah.
Everybody always wants, one thing that's always being, as the CEO of Scrum.org, I get asked a lot, what's next? And this kind of does provide a what's next. Whether it's right is a different question, but it definitely is. Hey, this is the kind of thinking that's going to come into the Scrum community and into our sort of like thought leadership. So number one, that I think there's a huge sort of like relief that there is something next, that Scrum has got a future. Secondly, the ideas whether
got a future, but also that are some challenges in part of Scrum are addressed. Maybe
exactly. So
like
we see, and as I'm sure you do in your organizations that you work with or you're part of, is that organizations that have not clearly understood their products, that aren't working towards a product mindset, have a harder time with Scrum.
Yeah.
And so this could potentially provide them with executive sponsorship to start becoming more aligned to product thinking, etc. So I think that is something that I think everybody's kind of happy about. Secondly, there's lots of ideas in product operating model, whether it's something about how in which you manage career development, or how you do how you define a backlog or whatever. Those things people are excited about using. For instance, just reframing the backlog to be more outcome centric.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, that's nice. Like, why don't I do that? Yeah, let's have a go. Thinking about personas and making sure that every sprint review you talk explicitly to the personas that your increment is helping, as it were. Things like that, little sort of more tactical things. So those two things, there's a future and there's some very clear practical things that we can do.
Yeah, and I read something about evidence-based, which is quite an important part of this. We didn't run over that part yet. Yeah. Can you tell us something about that?
The only reason why I didn't mention it is because it makes the title incredibly wrong. Agile Product Operating Model and Evidence-Based Approach. I mean, it's just like a mouthful, isn't it? But
is that the reason you didn't mention it?
That's the reason why I didn't mention it. I need to do a better job of saying it quickly or something. I don't know. I sort of, trying to avoid saying that really long that phrase. The reason why evidence is so important is because it's very possible, and this is actually what people like Marty Kagan talk a lot about with their when they're talking about product operating models, etc. That it's very important that you're using and gathering evidence continuously. Actually today, September the 11th, we've just launched a new class called Professional Product Discovery and Validation at Scrum.org. And the reason why we created that class was because we found a lot of organizations were having a really hard time allowing their teams to challenge the assumptions that were written in the backlog.
Yeah.
And that ultimately meant we were delivering a lot of unvaluable work, or a lot of waste, if we were using a sort of lean kind of term. That waste, is very annoying. They say 70% of the features in most software systems are rarely or never used.
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous amount of waste.
Or they are deployed and then they are never taken a look at, or estimate like, okay, is it worth it? Was it worth it? Did we estimate it right?
So what the validation discovery is all about is it's about challenging those ideas, right? It's about literally taking those assumptions in your backlog and looking at the most economic way to ensure that it's the right assumption, and then changing based on the feedback.
Yeah.
So how do you build evidence in your organization to make the right decisions continuously? And Scrum.org invented something called evidence-based management as an approach to sort of like really distilling those questions in a more systematic way, and that's at the heart of the operating model.
Yeah, and there are always things uncertain, and sometimes you have just to try something. But how can it happen that still such a lot of things in a work are not evidence-based? and they cost a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of resources. How is that possible in your opinion?
Because it's hard. It's hard to know whether somebody's going to use that feature. It's hard to know if that feature will land well. It's hard to, and it's much easier to make assumptions. And to be fair,
and more comfortable maybe.
Yeah, and it's. And remember, I know more about this than my users. If we deliver this feature and they don't use it, it's because they're idiots, not because it's wrong.
I was not wrong. Yeah.
I was never wrong. I think that we need to become a lot more humble and a lot more curious in how we approach the problems we're trying to solve. And I'm hoping that we will become a lot more evidence-based. The other thing is we're going to have the tools to do it, right? We have a lot more tools. We recently moved on to Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and the tools that we have at our disposal to see what people really want on our website based on their usage is incredible.
It's getting better and better.
Oh, I know. And there's AI now with this thing called Einstein. I mean, everybody's probably AI is called Einstein, right?
Yeah.
But and these tools are just they're so good at using inference on data. Much better than I've ever have been. So I'm hoping that if we can increase the tools, which we are, and we have this mindset of curiosity and humbleness, then we're going to become more evidence-based.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so, because I see a lot of people not working that much evidence-based because it's a little bit more comfortable not to do so. You can keep on doing your job, and I don't know. It just doesn't feel that right to me always. However, we're talking about this Agile Product Operating Model. We're here for all the POs. What do you think the impact would be on for the PO itself? And can the PO, the product owner, take like a leadership or a leader role in this small transition or addition? I mean,
the short answer, and I'm not really good at short answers, is yes. I think that the product-oriented, the last century or the last age, project managers were kings, right? And they're the most program managers, and they led the charge. I think this age, product managers and product owners are going to be kings, right? And I think that ultimately.
Let's hope so.
Not because we have this. And by the way, I'm not advocating some sort of totalitarian hierarchy here. But what I mean by that is that we're going to empower people to make decisions about the products that they own and deliver on, and those products become the currency of value inside an organization. And I think that is ultimately the future. And I mean, people say, let's move to a customer-centric way of thinking about the world. My experience is customers are a crucial part of any product, but not the only part. There's stakeholders, there's cost, value, there's cultural appropriateness. Not every company can do everything. There's a lot of things around product that are much more than just the customer. So the future has to be product-oriented, in my opinion.
Yeah, that sounds promising. And as all the people are arriving in the foyer over here, so people that are listening to the podcast might hear some people, some noises, which is totally fine as we are at the event. Maybe the last thing to run over, what advice would you give to the product owners that are listening right now?
I think that we're on a journey, right? I think that product ownership is a moment in time saying, we need to have clear leadership around products. And I think the tools are emerging to help product owners be more effective. We talked about AI tools, but also just tools like user stories, tools like elevator pitch, tools like discovery and validation, the truth curve. All of these kind of tools are becoming more accessible to product owners.
Yes.
I also believe that we need to continuously look at how we're aligning our organizations to serve our products better. And I think that the Agile Product Operating Model and evidence-based approach provides us with some of the ideas to start thinking about how we can structure organizations to more effectively deliver products in the digital world.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. It was great to have you. It was really nice to chat with you. My very first English podcast episode.
Awesome. You're a lot better than my Dutch. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. It was great to have you here. I know a lot about Scrum, the future, where it was coming from. And I hope to see a little bit more of you today at the keynote speak or talk. So thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you for inviting me. Dank u wel.
And to conclude this episode, I would like to thank you all for listening and tuning in to this episode of the Product Owner Podcast together with Dave West, CEO of Scrum.org. And if you have any questions or feedback after listening to this podcast, feel free to email me. My email address is ruud@productowner.nl. Thank you very much and see you later.